Well, here we are with the Ace 900, and like everybody else who has one of these, the input shaft has died on it, or I guess the output shaft. So I have the updated output shaft here, but that's the old style crank. So I went kind of around every solution as to try to fix this, and the only proper way is to install a new crankshaft. So here I am, and I'm going to go ahead now and tear down the entire engine. Going to get to the crankshaft, and I'm going to basically share my experience with doing this and let y'all know basically how hard it is to do it. But we're going to do it top to bottom, and the motor doesn't even have 50 hours on it. But the ski looks like death because it's just been sitting ever since it happened. So we're going to go ahead and tear it down, and we'll see what we find. You can see inside. I can get some light in there. A little bit of rust. A little bit of rust. A little bit of rust. But what it looks like the valve guides are what's got a little rust on it. So maybe they use steel valve guides. I sprayed some WD-40 in there, so that's kind of what you're seeing. This is the good side. Let's see what this looks like. Those look. I can get it to focus. That looks pretty good. Go to this side. Looks good. Number 3. Those look good. So it looks good. I'm satisfied with that. It all came apart pretty easily. One thing I did notice about taking this apart is you have to buy special inverted Torx. And then they also sell regular Torx bits, which are these, your star bits, but then they also sell something called Star Plus, which is basically like where the star is, it's a fatter point on the star. And I believe that these style here are the Star Plus, which are just another tool that they make you buy. All right, I'm gonna keep getting into it. Let's see. And voila. Don't want to mess the gasket up. Set that there for now. Everything in this thing looks so pristine because of how few hours is on it. I mean, it's just so freaking clean. Crazy. It's amazing the amount of horsepower that's packed into something so small. I mean, the size of this is like impressively small for what it can do. It just looks so pretty. And they did all this engineering and made something like this and so make so much power, and then they stick something like this. It's like taking this little $3 flashlight and saying, hey, here's a $1,000 engine, let's go ahead and put a $3 output shaft on it. Let's sell it. That's just so ignorant. And then you look, it's old school. It's got the old bucket style lifters like an old 1.9 liter Saturn. That's pretty cool. All right, well, I'm gonna keep getting into it. So I was looking at the back of the motor. I guess you would call this the face of the motor, if the back would be the output shaft. I was trying to see what I could leave on here and what I didn't have to take off, but it looks like I'm gonna have to go ahead and take the water pump off, the oil cooler off. This right here, I believe, is probably gonna house like the magneto or whatever, the stator. Probably gonna have to take off every motor mount. Not really sure, like this piece here, May not, I don't know. But I'm just gonna go ahead and start labeling everything and take it apart piece by piece. And if you've noticed what I've been doing on a lot of the parts, I've been taking things off and then putting the bolt back in its designated spot so I don't mix anything up. So I took the side plate off the engine and I noticed something. I'll have to do a little research, but what I believe is this should be a typical water jacket. And if you see the oil that's in it, this is like an oil jacket. So what I believe, which is kind of cool, is I believe this fills with oil, possibly, and it's cooled by the oil, maybe. So it has water here, and then you have an oil to water cooler separator. So water will go in here and then out of here. Oil goes in here and out of here. And it cools the oil using water. And then since the oil is cooled, it keeps this cool. I don't know. That's kind of what I'm thinking anyways. Maybe it's got a separator in here that floods this with water and then this with oil. I don't know. But it's a little different. Well, since I made a giant mess with oil, I decided to bring the oil pan over here and lay the engine on its side to where all the oil trapped in the other side will come out and it won't continue to make such a giant mess. So I've already drained out what seems to be about 6 quarts out of this thing, but I'm gonna continue to let it drain and come back in about an hour and keep ripping it apart. Okie doke. Now I finally got it out of the oil pan and got it drained. So the next process will be to take the cylinder head off. So I've started by removing these bolts here, and I'm going to continue, and then we'll get this top journal off that holds the camshafts, and then I believe the cylinder head will come off. Oops. Okay, learning as we go. I put these bolts back in and I tried to loosen this with the big impact, but it would not work. So I come down here and I look and I see a gap. See that gap right there? So what I believe is I'm going to take these back out and we're going to separate the top from the bottom. And then the cams should actually come up to where I can get that off to where maybe the chain will come loose. Okay, so we did that. Whole top piece comes off. Set that right there. Now we'll give this a quick inspection. Okay, see, we got some O-rings right here. I gotta know all these things, so this video will help me to put it back together. Okay, so if you look right here on your motor, you have a Torx that kind of just looks like an oil plug that sat there. This was your chain tensioner, and it has a little spring here. So basically once I looked down in here and I could see that it was pushing on it, I just removed that, the chain became loose, and then you can take it off. It did take a little finessing, but it does come off. So I got this whole assembly off. I went ahead and put 2 zip ties on it and all the O-rings and everything, put all the bolts back in it and zip tied it together top to bottom to where it kept everything where it belongs. Now we get a nice good shot of the bucket lifters. Let's take one of these out and see what it looks like. Just looks old school. I guess your spring would be below that. So we're going to leave all those in there, and we're going to go ahead and start figuring out what size the head studs are, and we're going to go ahead and take those out. So the head studs are an E14 reverse style star bit. There's two over here on the inside that I am missing. Those two right there. So when you take all of the head studs out, you still have to take those two out because you can see the seam here, so it's holding it together right here. We're learning together, guys. I'm gonna say it's this one right here. It's a T30. Take our magnet. It's a grabber. I'm gonna go down, pull that bolt out, go down, pull that bolt out. Go ahead and remove the head studs. Okay, there's all your head studs. Now the head should theoretically come off if we're lucky. Yep, got separation. We're good on that side. Good on this side. So now she should come up. Got an MLS gasket. Okay, what are we keeping? Go ahead and take this runner out. This one might be on a hinge. Yeah, I'm gonna say that one's on a hinge. Okie dokie. Cylinder head is off. Y'all get to see it before I do. Go ahead and lift this up, but not too much to where the bucket lifters don't fall out. We'll take a peek. So that's your top. That's your middle. And then that's your bottom. So we basically can conclude that the center cylinder has been closed the entire time, but the number 1 and the number 3 have been open. You can tell by the rust that's on the valves. Take in mind, this ski has been sitting for probably 4 or 5 years. But not too bad on carbon buildup. Looks pretty good, honestly. But I'm going to go ahead and rotate the engine over a couple times and inspect the sleeves. I want to inspect the sidewall of the cylinder to make sure I don't have any gouging or any rusting or anything like that. These are all the same size. Probably gonna be leaking out a lot of oil. So it's like no matter what I do, I couldn't get all the oil out of this thing. Now it seems like something's got me held up. Might be the magneto in the stator. Definitely, yeah, it's magnetized. It feels like it's pulling me back in. All right, so I'm gonna show you. See, we got this gear here, and we got that spring there. It's trying to come apart, but down there on that drum, kind of in the center, that's got a magnet. Got another gear here, and you got this, your thermostat. So we want to make sure that all that goes back in the order that it came out.
It's really hard doing this without a service manual. I'd recommend, if you're going to do this, if you don't have the skill set, to at least go online and buy a service manual, which I might do in order to set timing correctly. Okay, so we have the whole front plate taken off. And you see the drum here. We have a plastic gear. This is crazy. I don't understand why they do things like this. You know, it's cool that it's bathed in oil, but plastic gear is still a plastic gear. That's just engineers. So this pin here actually came out, and then this gear. So this gear is what engages the starter, and then it reduces it down to this, which spins the flywheel, which spins the crankshaft. So that pin was actually in here, and I went ahead and put it back in there so the gear wouldn't fall out, but everything on here looks pretty good. This is a number 30 Torx. Probably gonna get a lot of oil. Very complex engine. So basically, the way these are designed is you have head studs, and I guess these are the same as your head studs. This is going to hold the bottom portion of the motor, which is here, to the midsection of the engine. So on a regular wet sump motor, this would be kind of like your oil pan, and it would just be open. But since this is like a dry sump setup, to where, you know, you don't get oil slosh in the jet ski, they have to keep it all sealed up. If not, you'll end up with oil in the bottom of your cylinder walls. So this is how they have it. Whole bunch of galleys. So what we have to do next is we have to take all these little bolts out. So you got this one here, this one, here, here, here. Then we go up top here. You got that one and that one. And then we have to take off these big ones. So I'm going to go ahead and take off all the small ones and then take off the big ones. They're pretty tight, probably 89 foot-pounds. Now what I want to do here, I want to make sure that these studs and the head studs are a little different. Or are they the exact same? And they are the exact same, so there's no mixing up the top or the bottom studs. They are all the same. Go ahead and bundle these up together. Label all these, put them in Ziploc bags. Those will be for the bottom and the others will be for the top. Now all we gotta do is split the case. Okay, I lied. There is a few more things to do just before we split the case. So we have this bolt, this one, and this one. And that one there, right there. And then you come around to this side, and you have this one here. Now I believe I've already removed the ones that were underneath here. So I have this one. So I gotta take that one off and then the others. Now these little bolts down here, these are in there at such a weird angle that I have to put a universal on it. But I broke them all with a regular ratchet. I'm just lazy. Now, I believe these are very important to label, but because I'm documenting it for YouTube and for all you viewers, I'm just going to be able to watch back through my video and see how I took it apart as a way to help me put it back together. Or I'm going to do all this for nothing. And I'm only out 600 bucks, which is the cost of the ski. So now we have the dividing line here, which is the seam from the top and the bottom. So I'm going to pick a wedge point, which would be like right here. I'm going to smack it. And it's separated. Hooray! Alright. I need to take the pry bar and put it in here. See if I can just slide the bottom out. And the whole bottom slides apart. Got all this is covered in gasket maker, so. And there we go. And you have all the gears are still in place, which is a good thing. I won't have to worry about that. Now I will take this and I will clean it up. But I need to inspect the bearings, make sure the bearings are good. For as few hours as this has on it, I expect everything to be good. But with it sitting for 4 or 5 years, I want to make sure that nothing inside of it is detrimental to rebuilding it. And here we have our rotating assembly. So we have the timing chain down here. And this thing should spin and fall out. Cool. I'm not sure if I really want it to fall out right here at the moment. I think my best shot would be to leave it like this and go ahead and take off my rod caps and leave the pistons in the cylinders for right now and just get the crankshaft out. Okay, time to take the rod bolts out so we can get the rod caps off and slide the crank out. So in order to do that, you have to have a 12-point socket, and I'm using a 9mm. Lift it up. Already loosened these. Okay. Now it's important to keep the caps for each individual rod and the direction that they went on. So I don't see any. Okay. So these are done just like every other Can-Am. These are broken rod caps. So the way that they ended up making these from the factory is the connecting rods are actually one piece and they snap them off. And when they do, you get a very rough surface on this right here. But what you get is an exact mating surface. So it will only fit on each rod in one direction. You just have to make sure you get that correct. So I'm going to lay them out in the orientation that they came out of the motor. Nope. And the crank's trying to fall out now that it doesn't have the rods connected to it. Got that one in a bind. That's holding it up. Okay. And that comes out. And what fell out here would be your thrust washer. So that's going to be chilling up here. But I know about those. So we'll go ahead and take this timing chain, we'll slide it off. There we go. And I noticed that on this one here that the rod bearing came out with it. So we'll go ahead and pop that back into the rod itself. That'll stay there. And then voila, we have the crank. So now we have the crankshaft out, and what ends up having to happen is this piece here has to be taken to a lathe. The entire crank has to be put in a lathe. And since this is a 2014, 2015 model crankshaft, either I have to buy a newer updated crank, because you can tell how massive this collar is here versus how small this one is. So basically they're going to take this and lathe this all the way down and then run a die over it and cut threads on it, and then this piece will then thread onto the crankshaft to where it's interchangeable. That was the flawed design in these to begin with. And you can buy a new one online. I think a new crank is going to cost you roughly 800 bucks, and then you're going to need all the gaskets and all the material to put it back together, which will probably be in the gaskets a little over $200. So that's just $1,000 in parts to get it back right. And if you were to take this to a shop, they're going to charge you labor. So when a shop tells you that it's going to cost you $3,000, $4,000 to fix it, it's not really worth it as far as the cost of the jet ski. For me, I'm just doing it for fun because I know how to disassemble an engine and put one back together. Basically, I know enough to get myself in trouble. So as long as I do it correctly and take my time and pay attention, then I think I'll be able to do it. But if for some reason I can't, then I can always piece the jet ski out and get my money back. But we're gonna go ahead and wrap this thing in plastic. I'm gonna take it to my machinist and show him a few of the threads that I found online. Basically show him that the threads inside here need to be some males on here, and see if he can do it. And if he can, then I will have a assembly video of this going back together. Well, that's going to be it for now. Thank y'all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the teardown. I hope it helped anybody out there who wanted to do this themselves. A little bit of a how-to and step-by-step process, but we got the crankshaft out, and I think I'm going to get online tonight and probably order a manual to where I can assemble this motor correctly. That way I'll know how to time the engine. My number one thing is timing it. So when I put it back together, I need to be able to line all the timing marks. And because the engine is so different than the typical car engine, I really want to know step by step how to put it back together, or I'll be doing it one way and then I'll have to take it back apart because I forgot something or whatever the case may be. But we got the crankshaft out, so that was our main job. Hope y'all enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button. Give me a thumbs up. Peace.